So that's how it's looked throughout the day. And now with minutes to go before the close of polls, Israelis are asking who will be the king and who will be the kingmaker. Because in Israel, even though elections are an important part of a very politicized society in Israeli history, not a single party has been able to achieve that 61-seat majority in the 120-member Knesset. So Israeli politics is always about coalition building. In a political landscape which is notoriously fractured, there's 32 parties from the very far right to the very far left who are competing. Will the man who will be asked to form the next government look to the left or to the right? Let's talk to some of our experts. David Landau, first of all, to you, veteran Israeli journalist, now the correspondent for the international magazine The Economist. With minutes to go, what is on your mind now? What's the big surprise?
I feel that we're witnessing, I say this with hesitation, the beginning of the end of Bibi Netanyahu. Now, I say it with hesitation. He's been, obituaries have been written about Bibi Netanyahu before, and he's come back, he's bounced back. He's got tremendous resilience, man with determination. But this time, and I'm not thinking so much of the Israeli electorate, within his own party, the recriminations are already all over the internet. Why did you join with Lieberman's, Russian party, Yisrael Beitenu? You blended two parties together, 45 votes on paper, you'll be lucky if you get 30. Why did you do it? Why have you let the Likud lurch to the right, putting off voters who've apparently massed to the center? Bibi Netanyahu facing trouble in his own party.
Well, Mitchell Barak, who's with you, worked for Benjamin Netanyahu, or Bibi, as you call him. You've been keeping a close eye. What do you think is going to be one of the big issues of this election once the results are out?
Well, it's going to be how he's going to form the government. But I think going into the election, the problem is Netanyahu was really running unopposed. He had no person that he could make into an enemy. So when you do that, and when everyone agrees from left to right that Netanyahu is going to be the next prime minister, so you free up those people, and they say they can vote for someone else because they know Netanyahu is going to get it. The other thing that I think your viewers need to understand about the Israeli election is it's not like in Great Britain where you either vote for the Conservative Party because you believe in the ideals or you like Cameron, or you vote for the Labour Party, or you vote for the Liberal Democrats. That's how it works in most countries. Nobody votes for the Liberal Democrats because they want Cameron to get in. In Israel, that's how everyone votes. Everyone is looking for a voting angle here. Everyone's looking for a strategy. People will tell you, I like Netanyahu, therefore I'm voting for Naftali Bennett. I like Netanyahu, therefore I'm voting for Lapid because I want Lapid to influence the coalition. So no one is really voting for the person or the policy or the party that they want. Everyone's got a strategy. I
think you have to be an Israeli to understand that. And well, what is on your mind, just with minutes to go? What looks interesting to you now?
Well, certainly it seems that Netanyahu has been taken for granted by the voters in the sense that everyone assumes he will be the prime minister. And as a result, the election has been whether people will be in opposition to Netanyahu or whether they will be next to Netanyahu. This is how Israelis voted. Who do I want either to oppose him, or who do I want to be next to him and to steer him in the direction that I prefer? There is no one seriously voting for someone who will be an alternative prime minister to Netanyahu, and this makes it a very unique election, certainly in the last few decades. And when we look at some of the parties that are likely to be stronger, they have become stronger either because they made it very clear that they will be next to Netanyahu and will steer him in a certain direction, or people want them to be a good opposition party. They don't even begin to expect them to truly be an alternative prime minister.
Well, in a very Israeli way, all of you have given this impression that whether he wins or loses, Benjamin Netanyahu is in trouble. Is there any doubt that he is going to be the next king, as to use the Israeli expression?
Until we hear the results, there is, I think, a scintilla of doubt. There's a possibility that he won't be able to put together a coalition, and the president, therefore, will turn to somebody else and say, even though you're not necessarily the leader of the largest party, you in the center may have a better chance than Netanyahu on the right of pulling together a coalition. I think that what people are thinking about in the political community is, even if if Mr. Netanyahu does manage to pull it together, how long will it last?
And is it clear, Bishop, because, Einat presented this idea that Benjamin Netanyahu, if he is chosen to choose the next government, he will have to look either to the right or to the left. Is there any indication now whether it will be the shift to the right as was widely predicted, or whether with some of the reports coming out now that may not be the case?
Well, we'll have to see what the numbers are, but I think the key thing against him is the magic word is momentum. In an election campaign, you want to have momentum for your party, and that's why some of these other parties have gained in the last few days, surprisingly. The problem now for Netanyahu is the momentum is against him. Once we get the results, he's already in a backward walk. He's got to now get some momentum to form the government, and people are already off Netanyahu. If his party is really solo, the momentum is with the newer parties, the newer faces. Let's change direction. He's going to have a real problem trying to get some of those people to fall into his leadership again.
It's something very interesting about Israel's political system is that with every election, there seems to be a new face which is regarded as the most charismatic, the most exciting, the most, as you say, whether you're on the right or the left, you tend to look to. Einat, people are talking a lot, just in these last few hours, about Yair Lapid, famous, of course, for being a very popular television anchor, formed his own political party, entitled, rather interesting, There Is a Future. Now, in the last few hours, saying that he could be the kingmaker rather than Naftali Bennett on the right, the self-made millionaire, who people were talking about for weeks.
Well, to be a kingmaker, you need to have several alternative kings as possibilities. So I don't think that Lapid will be a kingmaker in the sense that he can swing two different alternative prime ministers, but he can certainly be in a far better negotiating position than people imagined. And in general, Netanyahu believes, like all prime ministers before him, governing from the center. He will seek to have parties to his right and to his left. He did it in the last election. It was very important for him to either have Kadima or Labor to the left of him. This is his policy. As a prime minister, you govern from the center and make sure that you have a right flank and a left flank, and that allows you to truly be the prime minister of the center.
What a difference a day of voting has seemed to make. As the day has gone on, the interest and the excitement about this election has grown hour by the hour. Was it the unexpectedly warm weather today? Was it that Israelis woke up to the importance of voting in elections for the 19th Israeli Knesset, the parliament? That will be the politicians who will decide what are the issues that will be dealt with, what are the issues that will be resolved in the next 4 years here in Israel. The polls are about to close just in seconds here. Exit polls will be broadcast on Israeli television channels. They're not official, but they'll give us an indication of who will form the next government in the state of Israel. Welcome to our BBC News special. I'm Lyse Doucet. We're broadcasting from West Jerusalem on the night that Israelis have gone to the polls. The polls have just closed, and exit polls are now coming out on Israeli television channels. We have our experts here with us, David Landau, Mitchell Barak, Einat Wilf, and let's take a look at what is coming out on the leading Israeli news channel. Channel 2 television is showing us now what it believes the results have been for Israel's election. David Landau is with us, taking a look at these results. David, your top line.
It's knife edge. Lyse, it's knife edge. According to those figures, Netanyahu can just about put together a right religious government, which are his natural allies, and that puts him in a very, very vulnerable position. He just got the edge, 61-59, but that makes
31 seats there, they've said.
Yeah, 31 of his own party, but with all his allies, the religious and rightist parties together, he's got 61 out of 120, which is about as narrow a majority as you can get, and that means that we're in for long, arduous negotiations.
Mitchell Barak, what has caught your notice?
Well, it looks like Netanyahu won the battle, but he may be losing the war. And the war is what's coming up now, which is forming the coalition. Again, the numbers, we still have to wait for the final numbers. It looks very tight. But again, Netanyahu looks like someone who has not been successful in what he tried to do, which was to increase his mandate, to get proper backing from the people to continue 4 more years. He doesn't seem to have that. And he's going to have a problem now.
So just to emphasize, according to the exit polls on the leading news channel, Channel 2, 31 seats for the electoral alliance of Likud Beitenu. In second place, this is what the speculation was just before the polls closed, that Yair Lapid, who heads the Yesh Atid, 19 seats. That is a huge phenomenal for him, who went from nowhere, prominent Israeli television presenter, 19 seats. So in third place, the Labour Party, old traditional party of Israeli politics and society, with 17 seats. Einat Wilf, just your comment. David Landau called it knife edge. How do you describe it?
I actually look at different numbers. I think the magic number is the combination of Likud, Yesh Atid, Lapid's party, and Bennett's party. They passed 61 in all polls, it seems like it. And that means that they can together be the basis for a coalition that will focus, for example, on what is called here a more equal distribution of the burden, the service of the ultra-Orthodox in the military. They can do that. If that serves as the basis of the coalition, Netanyahu can have actually a very strong coalition with a message that will appeal to many voters. And even then, if religious parties join him, they will have to join at a much lower price than in the past. So I actually think the magic number is not right versus left. It's rather the coalition for sharing the burden with Likud, Bennett, and Lapid. And in all polls, they passed the 61 threshold.
Yes, let's go back to our election experts here, freezing in the cold, but I think excited about this election atmosphere as it's hotting up here. David Landau, you've seen what the exit polls are saying. We have to emphasize to our viewers that these are not the final results. What do they tell us about what coalition building will be like?
Well, I think that Bibi Netanyahu is going to face very grave difficulties. And I want to remind us all at this stage, and we're journalists, we're proud of Yair Lapid, left journalism, went into politics, done brilliantly. But let's remember that he's not completely a political neophyte because he's his father's son. His father, too, led a centrist party. And I say this because his father, at a moment when Ariel Sharon was going to make that withdrawal from Gaza, and as he hoped, trigger a real peace process, Lapid's father supported the peace camp. And I think that that tradition, if you like, family tradition, that heritage, the father's dead now, will weigh very heavily on Yair Lapid. I don't necessarily agree with outgoing Knesset member Einat Wilf, who was a member of the Netanyahu coalition, giving him this sort of patina of moderation, a sort of a party that purported to support peace and therefore he could not make peace. I think that Yair Lapid will be under heavy pressure both in the country and from the international community. Look at William Hague in the House of Commons today in Britain, warning Israelis, and particularly, I think, by tomorrow, warning Yair Lapid. The two-state solution is going down the tubes, and Yair Lapid is now carrying the burden of the fate of the two-state solution.
Mitchell Barak, you were listening with interest to what David Landau says, and I think it says that you don't agree with him. But do you also see, at least in these exit polls, that Yair Lapid, a former television presenter, could play a key role going forward?
Well, he's absolutely going to play a key role going forward. David mentioned his father. It's, of course, we're outside of the old city walls from the time of King David. Israelis love a dynasty, certainly a political dynasty. We see many father and son, father and daughter combinations in the Knesset, and Israelis love it. He's going to play a key role. Likud is, we have to look at the Likud Beitenu for what it is. If it's about 31 seats, only about 20 or 21 of those seats belong to the actual Likud. The rest is Yisrael Beitenu. There was talk before the election that those parties are going to actually split. Yeah. No, those parties may actually split into separate factions after the election. So it's not even clear if Netanyahu has all those 31 seats to bring to a coalition. So that's something to keep in mind. It is very possible. I'm sitting in the middle here, and I agree with both of them. It could very well be that it's a deadlock, and we're looking at possibly some type of a very close race, and that Netanyahu can't form the government. And on my left, we're hearing that he can form a very strong government. Both of them are correct.
Oh, well, Einat Wilf, as David pointed out, you're an outgoing member of the Knesset. Your party was set up by the former Defense Minister Ehud Barak. You were working with the Likud. What do you think accounts for the Likud fall in these, what seems to be, according to election polls, they're backtracking now?
Very simply, that people took for granted the fact that Netanyahu will be prime minister, and as a result, they decided to vote for parties that will steer him in the direction that they want. So there's really no one else that is being seriously considered as prime minister right now in Israel. But the way I interpret the election results, and especially the support for Lapid, is Israelis want a more civic agenda. They want emphasis on perhaps less religious values in the public sphere. They want a more equal sharing of the burden in terms of service in the military. They want more liberal economics. And this is why I think Netanyahu can form a very strong coalition, because with Bennett and with Lapid, they can all agree on a liberal economic policy that will free up some of the concentration of economic control in the Israeli economy. They can agree on a civic agenda, on easing religious restrictions in certain areas. So they can do it.
Yes.
And,
but the fear will be that you talk about as a civic agenda, that may be a very uncivic kind of politics. It's so fractious, Mitchell Barak, it may be a very unstable governing coalition. And Israel has seen, or after past elections, that coalitions are built and then are broken.
It could be, but it's too early to tell. The one thing I would say is all bets are up. From before the election, every party was saying how they're going with Netanyahu, they're not going with it. I'll never sit with this person, I'll always sit with it. Nothing is relevant right now. Everyone is open to join the coalition, even Labor that said she's not going to join. Everyone has a possibility to join this government. So now we all start from scratch. There were really no issues in this campaign, really no serious issues that were being debated. And I like to say that the parties, I think, were going with the Groucho Marx principle of campaigning. These are my party's policies, and if you don't like them, I have other policies. And
but Mitchell, you've worked very closely with Benjamin Netanyahu. We talked earlier about how you felt he was panicking in the last hours, calling on his voters to drop everything and go out and vote. When he saw those figures coming up on the exit polls, what would have been his reaction?
Well, he knows he has a problem, because he has the leading members of Knesset and ministers in his party, the Likud part, are now waiting and saying, you made a great mistake. You brought in Yisrael Beitenu, you lowered our representation almost to record levels, and now we have this other faction which may break away. This is a failure from that point of view, and he knows it's a problem.
And the rest of the world looking, David, what will they take a look at this?
I'm not sure that I agree that there were no issues. I think that Mr. Bennett on the right very, very clearly articulated the issue of not having a two-state solution. And he says that he will do everything to prevent a two-state solution. And I think the world looking in, starting from President Obama, were very aware of the danger of the next Israeli government being a Bennett-type government. And I think that's where the parties of the center and of the left are going to be very conscious of Bennett radiating a very, if you like, principled, I'd rather call it fanatical position opposing Palestinian independence. Are you going to get into bed with a party like that?
But if the exit polls are correct and his party has 12 seats in
Yes.
the 120 members, with 10%, can he have that kind of power?
Well, Einat Wilf has put together what she calls a very strong government. Arithmetically, it has exactly 61 out of 120, which is the weakest majority arithmetically possible. And she says that that's going to be a very strong government. And I put it to you that Yair Lapid will think twice and three times before getting into a coalition with Mr. Bennett, who, to his credit, I think a breath of fresh air in Israeli politics, says what he means, and he means no two-state solution.
So it's all about politics, it's about personalities, but it's also about the arithmetic. We don't have the final results yet. We possibly will know by tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning here in Israel. And just a quick look at Channel 2, they're very much similar. And I should tell you that in Israeli elections, exit polls are fairly reliable, but there have been elections where they got them wrong. So Channel 2, quite similar though. Likud Beitenu 31 seats, Yesh Atid with 19, Labour with 17, Jewish Home on the right with 12, the ultra-conservative Shas with 12. Still with us, our panel of experts, David Landau, veteran Israeli journalist, Mitchell Barak, pollster and commentator, former aide to Benjamin Netanyahu, and Einat Wilf, who was in the last Israeli parliament, was with the party of the former defense minister Ehud Barak, the Independence Party. She didn't run this time. And well, let me start with you to say, would you have wanted to run in these elections? You're actually a testament to how coalitions can be built and they can fall apart and new political actors come into the fray.
Well, first of all, the coalition I was part of was first with Labour, and then Labour was split over the partnership in the coalition. I'm personally very committed to public service in Israel and to political life, so I see it as a long-term commitment. It's very important for me to also mention, we talk about a lot of the details here, obviously, but the world is trying to look into the details and to see if it says anything special about a two-state solution. And I think it's important to say something very basic. Most Israelis, and sadly, many in the world don't get it, but I believe they should, don't see Israel as responsible for the fact that there's no two-state solution or no peace. They understand, and I think rightly so, that the reason there's no Palestinian state continues to be that the Arabs, the Palestinians among them, reject and deny that the Jewish people have an equal and legitimate claim to sovereignty in the only place where they were ever sovereign. This is why parties like Lapid's party, There Is a Future, could rise without saying much about a two-state solution, because people in Israel know that if there will be a possibility for peace, if the Arabs will one day wake up and recognize the Jewish people's legitimate claim to sovereignty here, Netanyahu or anyone else will make that peace. But as long as the Arabs continue to be the same rejectionists that they have been for the last few decades, it is better for Israelis to focus on building their society as a healthier society. The parties that focused on a two-state solution front and center, such as Livni, did not do well because nobody believes they can get anything done with Arab rejectionism.
Well, yes, and in fact, you mentioned Tzipi Livni. In the last election, 2009, her Kadima party came out on top with 28 seats. Now they've completely disappeared from the election. In fact, she's now gone on to form a new party. Such is Israeli politics. Israel, let's return to our panel of experts here. Einat Wilf, also Mitchell Barak, and David Landau, who's faring fine in the cold of Jerusalem. Let me bring in with you, Mitchell Barak. We've been talking about the Palestinians. Of course, that is an issue that matters in this region. It matters in Western capital. But on the first day of the 3-month-long election campaign, Benjamin Netanyahu said, the issue that matters is Iran. This is the year to confront Iran. Do you believe that that is going to be...
He spoke about it in the beginning of the campaign, but once the campaign started, he didn't speak about it anymore. And the reason he's talking about it is because right-of-center voters, those who identify more Jewish, they like to hear about security issues. With the left-of-center voters, the Israelis more like to hear about peace. So you have the security language and the peace language. So he has to beat the war drum in order to get his people excited and get them motivated, and that's the language that they like to hear. And I know that David doesn't agree.
Shaking his head. You don't?
No, I don't. You know, I mean, I've got a lot of criticism of Bibi Netanyahu on a lot of issues. But on this issue, on Iran, I believe that he is totally sincere, obsessively, if you like. He's been speaking about it almost as long as I know him, from back in the 1990s, before he became Prime Minister for the first time. He sees it as his mission as leader of Israel to prevent Iran reaching nuclear weapons. And I, for one, and I know I'm not typical of his critics, so to speak, I totally believe him. And I think it's because the Western world, led by the United States, also believe him that we're seeing today biting sanctions against Iran. And on that, in that respect, I think he was quite honest and truthful when he said to the electorate, the amount that's been achieved, it hasn't yet stopped the Iranian nuclear pretensions, but the sanctions that have been leveled against Iran are thanks to me.
Well, explain then to our viewers, what impact will the shape of the Knesset have on what you see as his determination to deal with this issue? Does he have a free hand? Is he reined in by both, of course, his own security people, but the parliament?
Very
is that how Israeli
yes,
politics works?
I think we're seeing tonight a weakened Benjamin Netanyahu, and it will affect his ability to dictate policy on Iran, to where we have to take into account the fact that the top echelon of the defense community, the army, the Mossad, the Shin Bet, all the top commanders are against Israel going it alone on Iran. And so a weakened Bibi will have it that much harder.
And well, you were inside that Israeli Knesset. You saw both its powers and its constraints. Does it have both the legal and the political clout to shape the kind of policies that if Benjamin Netanyahu is prime minister, he wants to pursue?
Ultimately, he has the power. In the past, we have seen that if people felt that war was justified, there was wall-to-wall support in all Knessets, all parliaments in the past. But again, in this issue, as in many others, I believe Netanyahu is deeply, perhaps tragically, misunderstood. He is by no means eager to go to war or eager to go on the attack. His message is always about how to prevent it. But in order to prevent it, there has to be a credible military threat. And to be credible, one has to be willing to employ it in order not to need to employ it at the end of the day. So I think his policy, and we have seen it in everything he did, has been very cautious. It's been about building power in order not to use power. And that has been his policy in Iran, as on many other issues.
But what I had said before was he prefers to talk about Iran than the peace process. And that's what his voter base wants to hear about. They don't want to hear about the peace process. They don't want to hear about the Palestinians. They do want to hear about the existential threat to Israel and the Jewish people. And that he's better than anyone in speaking at.
Well, I just want to have one comment from all of you. You're passionate about your politics, but of course all very much committed to a more prosperous and stable future for Israel. Tonight, as the exit polls have been announced, what is your main concern going forward? Just a comment from each of you.
I'm a little bit encouraged. I'm an inveterate optimist. I don't let my optimism run away with me. I'm a little bit encouraged by the way the Israeli electorate seems to have rejected anti-peace policies and have veered away from Netanyahu and towards the center. And that gives me some cause of hope.
Mitchell Barak?
I'm concerned that we may not have a government so quickly. We may not have a stable enough government, and we may be looking at elections within 12 to 15 months again. And Netanyahu is not as strong a leader within his own party, and this is going to be a problem.
Einat Wilf?
I believe the Israeli electorate has asked for focus on domestic issues, whether it is economics, a sharing of the burden, having a society where religious issues are less in the public sphere. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity here for Netanyahu's government to focus on these issues and to make leap changes for domestic Israeli society. I believe that the bigger issues, the two-state solution, will be determined by the large geopolitics, not by the nitty-gritty of electoral politics.
Einat Wilf, Mitchell Barak, David Landau, thank you for sharing with us your thoughts on what is, of course, a very significant life in the life of this nation. This is a deeply politicized society. The Israeli electorate has spoken. We should know the results by the morning, and then the horse trading will begin. The elections aren't even over. We're already hearing there could be elections again. But that's it from us on election night in Israel.
Now, Lyse Doucet is in Jerusalem with David Landau, the Economist Israel correspondent, and outgoing Knesset member Einat Barak.
Yes, and welcome to Jerusalem. We're continuing our Israeli election special. It's been an hour since the polls closed in Israel, and I have to say that after 3 months of a lackluster election campaign in what is a deeply politicized society, Israelis today seem to be back into the thick of it. Turnout, as we've just been hearing, was higher than expected. We're still waiting to see. If it goes over 70%, that will be truly significant. It will definitely be around the 65%, but let's wait for the official figures. What mattered is that Israelis seem to understand that they had to get out because, as they say in elections, every vote counted. And for the first time ever, Israelis will be able to watch the ballot counting online as the results come in. We should know through the night, get a better idea of who has won, and by the morning, Israelis will know. They won't know who the next will be in the next government because no party got a majority on its own. They never do in Israeli elections, but they may get a sense of who's likely to be the ones that Mr. Netanyahu will look at when he goes to form his coalition. Well, when the polls close in Israel, the tradition is that the exit polls are published at the same time. They are a pretty reliable indicator. Let's just look at the numbers that they are putting out for the main winners as they see it. First, to the leading news channel, Channel 2. As we've been reporting, Likud went into alliance late last year with the right-wing Russian immigrant party, Likud Betenu, with 31 seats. The surprise of the campaign is in second place, Yesh Atid, There Is a Future, of the former Israeli television anchor Yair Lapid, 19 seats. Labour, the traditional party of Israel, 17 seats. Jewish Home, the right-wing party, one of the rising stars in Israeli politics, 12. The ultra-conservative Shas party did marginally better, according to this exit poll, with 12 seats. Now, the numbers are roughly similar, but let's just show them to you on another leading Israeli channel, Channel 10. Likud Betenu, 31. Yesh Atid, There Is a Future, 18. Labour, 17. Shas, they give them one more seat with 13. And Jewish Home has 12 seats. So that's how the numbers look. But what do they tell us about what will be the shape of the next Israeli coalition? And as they always ask in Israel, just how stable it will be. Will it be to the right or to the left? David Landau, the veteran Israeli journalist, former Israeli newspaper editor, now with the Economist, is with us. Also, Einat Wilf, who was in the last Israeli Knesset, and you're almost a representative of the fractious nature of Israeli politics. You were in a newly formed party by the former Defense Minister Barak. That party no longer exists, and you're not running in this election. Welcome to both of you. David Landau, first of all, the most important issue is who will be asked to form the government after this array of results. It will be Benjamin Netanyahu again.
Yes, almost definitely. Although it doesn't have to be, but the president will naturally gravitate to him. But I think the cliffhanger goes right to the end, because if Netanyahu has 61 out of 120 seats with the parties of the religious right, which are the parties of his natural alliance, then he's in a much stronger negotiating position vis-a-vis the New Star, Yair Lapid, and all the parties of the centre and the left.
But it's possible he can just look to the right and the religious parties can form.
If it's arithmetically possible, that puts him in a strong position. But we won't know till the very last minute, because whereas this morning the whole country seemed to be persuaded that he's got 65, 66, and he'll be in clover, tonight the exit polls shows us 61 maybe.
And at Wilf, if in terms of the arithmetic, he can look to the right, do you think he will? Will that be the kind of a government that will allow him to pursue the policies that are best for Israel?
No. He believes, like many prime ministers before him, in governing from the center, which means he will want to have a right-wing party to his right flank and a left-wing party to his left flank. This is what he did in this government. The Labour Party and then us, independents, as a split from the Labour Party, served in the role of the left flank. And of course, Ehud Barak as defense minister. Benjamin Netanyahu believes that prime ministers must govern from the center, and he will make every effort possible to make sure, certainly, that Lapid, Yesh Atid, There's a Future, will be to his left, so that he can have balanced policies and manage the vectors on each side.
But David Landau, just what Einat is talking about, a little bit on the right and a little bit on the left. I think many people around the world will find this rather confusing and inexplicable, how a far right and a left-wing party can actually work together and produce something that works in terms of a coalition, in terms of policy.
Well, something that works, of course, is the question. I mean, Einat Wilf was a member of a government for 4 years in which nothing connected with peace worked. There was total passive paralysis, and this was the nature of the government. Yes. And a lot of people around the world...
I think it's Israel's fault.
It's certainly not only Israel's fault, but it's also Israel's fault. And a lot of people around the world are hoping that the next government will not be paralyzed on peace. And so this is the moment when you say to the potential partners in the new government, hold out for a peace policy.
So just a brief comment from both of you then. David Landau, if Israel, like any country, needs a stable government pursuing policies for the best interests of the country, will they get it out of these numbers?
Very hard, and we may be in for a long negotiation and a short government and new elections.
Already. Einat Wilf.
I will say yes, because even if you have parties from the right or the left, when it comes to security issues, they can often agree on issues of economics, civic issues within Israeli society, and this can make for a very stable government.
Well, we soon shall see. Einat Wilf, David Landau, thanks for being with us through the night. It's a cold night here in Jerusalem and across Israel after was unexpectedly warm winter weather through the day. That may have encouraged a lot of Israelis to get out and vote. I mean, that is the beauty of democracy. They had their say. We'll find out by tomorrow morning what they have decided, and then it will be up to the political leaders to try to put together a kind of coalition that works. But we're already hearing tonight that that's going to be a tough job indeed for the man who's expected to try to have that task, Benjamin Netanyahu. Already talk of more elections before they should be happening here in Israel. But for now, we're looking at the numbers and seeing how they add up. That's all from us now. Back to you in London.